Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming out today to stand up against the unacceptable and disturbing surge in hate that we are seeing across our country. My name is Pramila Jayapal, and I'm proud to be the Congresswoman from the 7th Congressional District in the state of Washington. And I really want to thank my colleagues who are here. We'll be joined later by Democratic Caucus Chairman Joe Crowley, Ranking Member of the Judiciary Committee John Conyers, Representatives Schakowsky, Jackson Lee will be joining us, Ellison will be joining us, Dingell, Gallego, Brenda Lyons, and Karen Bass, Corey Saylor from CAIR, Sonia Kotecha from SALT, and Margaret Wong with Amnesty International. We are so proud to have such a distinguished group of members and advocates who understand how important it is to speak out strongly, both from here in the Capitol and from outside. About 2 months ago, Chairman Crowley, I, and some of our colleagues and organizational advocates stood on those steps right there in front of the Capitol to announce a resolution condemning hate crimes in the wake of the killing of an Indian American man in Kansas, bomb threats in Jewish community centers, and vandalism of mosques. And just earlier this week, with the help and approval of our incredible ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, I sent a letter to Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, asking him to hold hearings on hate crimes. And we are waiting to hear back, and I genuinely hope that he will take this opportunity to take a stand on this issue, take this seriously, and work with us to stop these hate crimes. Unfortunately, in the recent weeks, months, and even days, the hateful rhetoric permeating our communities has only increased. The president is still tweeting about his Muslim ban and still pushing for draconian immigration policies that make it seem as if immigrants to America are to be feared. Directly connected, hate crimes continue to increase, each story more horrific than the last, and with no community really exempted. As you will hear from CAIR shortly, the group received 851 reports of anti-Muslim bias incidents in the first quarter of the year. And in the DC area alone, 5 nooses, symbols of horrific racial violence against African Americans, have been found, 2 in the African American Museum, at the MLK Center, and 2 at nearby universities. And last week in Portland, 3 brave and courageous young men stood up to defend 2 Muslim women against an Islamophobic rant. And what happened next was really unbelievable. 2 of the men, Rick Best and Talisian Mirdin Namkai Meche, were killed, stabbed to death, and the other, Micah Fletcher, was seriously injured. Their killer was captured on video at a right-wing rally in Portland in April, giving a Nazi salute and making white supremacist statements. Just as horrific, right after the stabbing, the same organizer who planned that first rally in Portland where the killer had been videotaped decided that it was time to organize another, what he called pro-Trump rally, that included speakers who have openly promoted violence and are connected to white supremacist groups. The callous disregard for the pain of the Portland community and those families was frankly disgusting. This Saturday, an anti-Islam hate group that goes by the name of Act for America is hosting anti-Muslim rallies in cities across the country. This thinly veiled gathering of dangerous, hateful, and misinformed extremists is nothing more than a setup to intimidate Muslim and other communities across the United States. And one of those rallies, I'm sad to say, is going to take place in my home state of Seattle, my home city of Seattle, a place that prides itself on our progressive values but is still not immune to this kind of hate. You can be sure that Seattleites will be standing together in solidarity and love, even as these protests spread hate and misinformation. Let me be perfectly clear, as an immigrant myself to this country who was born outside of the United States. This is our country. Yes. We are proud of it, yes, and we refuse to allow anyone else to define it for us. America is better than this hate. We know the real America. And to the people, families, and communities all over our country, traumatized by hate, we commit to drown it out. We will not be intimidated. And today we are here to pledge that we will double down on our moral obligation to fight injustice, to hold this administration accountable for its role in furthering hate, and to be there for those who are afraid and suffering from hate crimes. Our strength is in our numbers, and we are many. Together, we will build a hate-free America. And now it is my great honor to introduce a friend, a champion for justice for a long time, a leader in our caucus, Caucus Chairman Joe Crowley.
Let me first thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal, for your leadership here this afternoon, and for all my colleagues for being here today from all parts of the country. The great John Conyers from the great state of Michigan, who has been doing this leadership for decades, not years, but decades. We thank John and all the members we hear today. In this effort to demonize the Muslim population here in the United States, it's not new. We've been dealing with this issue for many years now, certainly post 9/11. But to now use the red herring of Sharia law, that's what this is. We are not now, nor are we in the future, a threat of Sharia law. But they use this as a red herring to stimulate hate towards the Muslim population here in the United States. They want to continue to oppose refugees whose lives are being threatened from coming here to the United States for the purposes of saving human life. We need to be doing more here in this country to be bringing people together and not dividing them. And that's what these marches are an attempt to do, to divide. But the American people will not be fooled. They will not be fooled. They know what this is about. They know it's about hatred. And they also know that much of this is being spurred on by the hateful rhetoric of the White House itself and the Commander-in-Chief, the President himself, throughout his campaign, and he continues to spew it as President. So once again, I just want to thank my colleagues for speaking out against these marches that will be taking place this weekend. We recognize the constitutional right to free speech. That's guaranteed under our Constitution. We do respect it. We can call it out for what we see it as being as well, hateful. And we'll continue to call it out as we see it as hateful when it raises its ugly head again. So with that, I'll call upon John Conyers, the great man himself from the great state of Michigan, as we call in New York, John Conyers.
Thank you very much. Joe Crowley, what a pleasure to follow you. I come here thinking about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who was the great champion fighting segregation and racism in this century. And I think, Representative Jayapal, you deserve our thanks and commendations for bringing us together on this particular subject. Yes. I'm indebted to you for it, and I know we all are. We've got a great turnout here. Now, according to this year's FBI Uniform Crime Report, there has been a 67% increase in hate crimes targeting Muslims in up to the year 2015. This is the most recent data that I've found, and it represents the highest level of anti-Muslim assaults since 2001. Mosques have been vandalized, defaced, burned, and people of a different religion predominantly have been killed. Veiled women have been verbally abused and physically assaulted. And those that try to stand up against these abuses have also been attacked, as we saw in Portland, Oregon last week. Make no mistake about it. The president's silence on these attacks make him complicit. We're urging that he speak out on this just as we are doing. It is deeply upsetting that in the year 2017, we're forced to call on the highest levels of government to restrain itself from bigoted policies like the Muslim travel ban and to condemn attacks like the one in Portland. And so we stand here with our friends, with our many friends in the Muslim community. Those of us from Michigan, and there are some, a lot, are acutely aware of the many contributions of hardworking Muslim men and women in the United States, and particularly in Michigan. So I stand here proudly with you all today and stand also for the diversity and openness that have made our nation great. The struggle continues. And now I introduce with pleasure the gentlelady from Texas, a distinguished member of the Judiciary Committee, Sheila Jackson Lee, herself, in person.
I cannot thank you enough. We have become sisters. And I want to thank my colleagues because we're standing here as brothers and sisters. Let me remind you of a Republican president after 9/11 who did stand with a bullhorn or say that this was not the time to attack our Muslim brothers and sisters. Let me remind you of the cities across America when members could get home. When I went home to Houston, Texas, I stood with the president of the Islamic Society. We stood in downtown Houston praying with people from many religions to say that we are one and that we would not accept the hatred that perpetrated or generated the terrorist acts of 9/11. Let me stand in the name of the late Captain Khan, who died in the name of his country. The reason why I can claim him is because his family members started their life in the United States in Houston, Texas. Let me stand in the name of all of the soldiers in the United States military who practice the faith of Islam. Let me stand in the name of their families. And then let me stand in the name of Mayor Khan, the mayor of London, who stood with his fellow brothers and sisters Londoners prayerfully to stand with the families of those who died, the families of those who were injured, and to be able to condemn with all of his heart the fact that he is not ISIL or Daesh or ISIS. He is not hateful, he is loving. And finally, let me stand with those who are now commemorating and celebrating Ramadan, a time of charity and peace and love. So today, Congresswoman, I join you, and in spirit, I will be in Seattle against hateful marches. And I want to say to those who hate, first there comes hate, then there comes violence, and then there comes death. And to our dear brothers in Portland, I want to honor them because they experienced hate. They stood up against it, and they lost their lives through violence. And I'm calling on the citizens of cities where these marches are, elected officials and mayors, county officials, congresspeople, find a mosque and go and worship. Find the Muslim community and stand with them peacefully in a place that acknowledges that we are not hate, but we are love. And then to the President of the United States, when you recognize that governing is not campaigning, speaking to the base is unacceptable, that what we are here about in America is what those founding fathers said, even though there were many of us who were not equal. But they indicated in the Declaration that we all are created equal with certain alienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. I ask you, Mr. President, do you stand with the Constitution and the recognition of the freedom of religion? And do you stand with the principles of this nation that we all are created equal? If you do, I want to see a Rose Garden speech to bring America together and demand that the attacks against Muslims and people of color stop now, and the hatefulness is over now. Where are you, Mr. President? Then I get to introduce a fighting lady who has always stood with us, and I call her the auxiliary member of the Judiciary Committee because she stands for justice, and that is the gentlelady from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky.
You know, these marches against Sharia law, against Sharia and against Muslims is absolutely a sickening attempt to instill fear in not only the Muslim community, but to instill fear in all the rest of Americans of the Muslim community.
Yes, yes.
It is an effort to divide. And this organization, Act for America, which is having a march in the city of Chicago, a very, very diverse city, where we work hard every day from the top levels of government in our city and in our county to bring people together. This is an organization known for its hate speech. So it's not surprising that one of the marches is being organized with the help of a known neo-Nazi, Billy Roper. This is the new normal, I'm sorry to say, under President Trump. And I believe, and again, I'm sorry to say, that much of this is what President Trump has wrought, that he has made it the new normal, that people can say things out loud that divide Americans. As a Jew, I feel it. African Americans are feeling it. Immigrants and refugees are feeling what the President of the United States has felt free to do from the Oval Office, from the campaign trail. And so we need to stand up together against the millions of, and with the millions of marchers across the country that started the day after the inauguration, the Women's March. Under that banner, Americans interested in all issues, all races and religions, all races and ages stood together to say that we, in solidarity, are fighting for equality and justice in the United States of America. And almost every weekend, there are marches for justice. And so we reject these marches for hate. We will not allow these hateful, divisive groups like those organizing this weekend to intimidate our Muslim brothers and sisters, to intimidate us from standing tall for justice. And I thank my dear friend, Representative Pramila Jayapal, for organizing this important press conference, and the rest of my colleagues who are gathered here in opposition to hate and division in the United States of America. And let me now introduce someone who has been such a leader in the fight for equality and justice, and was really the first Muslim to serve in Congress. And to say that in this world today, 1.6 billion Muslims are now recognizing the holy month of Ramadan.
Yes.
And that includes my dear, dear colleague and friend, Congressman Keith Ellison.
A man of peace. Man of peace.
All right, Keith.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan. Well, you know, oftentimes when we see hateful people having anti-Sharia marches or anti-Muslim or anti-Jewish marches, when they're on the march for hate, we sometimes have this internal discussion where we say, well, if we just ignore them, maybe they'd just go away. What they really want is attention. Well, the truth is they're not going away. And if we want to stop these people, we have to be loud, we have to be strong and vocal as we oppose them. We have to unite together on an interfaith basis and say, those of us who believe in human dignity, who believe our faith traditions are a connection between each other, not a wall between each other, we've got to come together. And I think it's critically important, particularly when the occupant of the White House starts off his campaign talking about how Mexicans are rapists, then moves on to a complete Muslim ban, then moves on to assaulting women, people with disabilities. He is green-lighting hatred, intolerance, and ugliness. I'm not surprised that you have these anti-Sharia marches and people pushing this legislation. Here's a factoid for everybody. There's not one city, one county, one state, one unincorporated municipal area in which Sharia law is mandated on the American people. It is an absolute phantom. So why are they doing it? Because it's like what Jan said, they want to make people fearful about their Muslim neighbors. They want to make people think, oh my goodness, what are we doing? These people are actually trying to push their version of their religion on everybody else. That's actually what's happening. They're the ones trying to restrict contraception access based on their religious values and not the individual who may or may not want that product. They're the ones who are trying to say, because of my religion, you know, we're gonna be able to have we're not gonna be, I don't have to sell or buy from somebody who might be LGBT or something like that. These are the folks who are imposing religion on America. No Sharia law I've ever seen. So let me just say, Martin Luther King often said it's not our opponents, it's not the haters that we worry so much about, but it is the appalling silence of our friends. Us friends will not be silent, not today. We're united, and we call on Donald Trump, President Steve Bannon, and everybody else to stand up and denounce this hateful activity if they actually do denounce this hateful activity. Thank you. And now, the one you've all been waiting for, Debbie Dingell, who, by the way, is fearless and is always on the front line when it comes to standing up for people's human rights. Debbie Dingell, everybody.
All right. Thank you. I want to thank Representative Ellison, who actually hails from my part of the country. And he does a fabulous job, and to stand with all of my colleagues and to thank everybody here for organizing it and stand. I'm from Dearborn, Michigan. I'm proud. That is my hometown. We have the largest population of Muslims in this country that live here. They are my neighbor, they are my friends. And we are tired of this fear and this hatred that is becoming more and more pronounced every day. I want to tell you about what it's like for the little children that I've known that aren't first-generation Americans. They're not second-generation Americans. They are third-generation Americans. And these little children, I haven't heard this once, I've heard it 30 times now, are coming to me. One little girl crying that she was going to be killed. The rest of the children afraid that someone is going to come knocking the door in the middle of the night and pull them from their homes and deport them from this country. We are a nation of many religions, of many cultures, and it makes us strong. I live across the street from a mosque. They're my friends. They are our lawyers, they are pharmacists, they are doctors, they are small business owners. They're the heart and soul of our community. And one of the darkest moments in this history of a country was done by somebody with the name Michigan, and it's Michigan militia. That was one of the darkest days in our life. So this latest attempt on Saturday to organize and to divide us with fear and hatred is unacceptable, must be denounced, and we have to stand up as Americans against what they're trying to do. I was listening to everybody, so I'm talking from my heart. I have a young Marine from my district who came to this country from India. He was a Muslim. He came to this country because he was being discriminated against. And when he came here, he appreciated freedom of religion and freedom of speech. He knew how lucky we were and what democracy meant. And because of that, a class valedictorian from Taylor, Michigan, wanted to go into the Marines and serve this country because he knew how lucky we were. And 2 weeks later, he was dead because he was a Muslim. The Marines are now talking about this case, and you've seen the other evidence. What is wrong with a country that spurs fear and hatred when someone wants to defend what it stands for? We are standing here today united against fear and hatred. They will not win, they will not divide this country, and they will be total failures on Saturday because we will be united against that hatred. Thank you. And now my colleague Ruben, who's a member of my class, who's always there for those that need to have a voice. He's wonderful.
Thank you. And unfortunately, I always have to follow Debbie Dingell, which is not a very easy thing. But I think the most important thing for us to start is that we need to re-emphasize this. If you're a Muslim, you're an American. If you're an atheist, you're an American. If you are an immigrant, if you're Latino, if you're Asian, and you're in this country, you're an American. The people who aren't Americans are bigots. Those are the type of people that we should definitely classify as non-Americans. It is against the spirit, founding spirit of this country, it is against the founding spirit of the Constitution, it is against everything we understand and we fought for. As a proud member of the United States Marine Corps, now a little older in my ages, I had the honor to serve with many Muslim Marines, and we were those guys were some of the hardest fighters in Iraq, and it kills me to think the amount of racism and bigotry they face, the amount of words that I see that get thrown at them on Facebook all the time. Their essential Americanism is being stripped away by people that hate them for what they believe and who they believe in, something that is counterfactual to what we believe is the values and ethos of this country. So all these marches that are going on, whatever the excuse is, it's all about bigotry. And any good American, Democrat, Republican, conservative, independent, whether you're elected or not elected, should come out in one voice and say that that is not acceptable. Those people are not Americans. They're not living up for American values, and we're here to protect everyone and make sure everyone gets to live the American dream. Thank you so much for everyone for organizing this. Thank you for everyone that's joining in the resistance this Saturday. You are the true Americans in this fight. With that, I'd like to introduce my good friend, also a member from Michigan, Brenda Lyons.
Thank you. Hey, Brenda.
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today as an African American woman who sat at the knee of my grandmother, who lived through, and I grew up as a child in the civil rights movement, where I saw clearly how hatred and discrimination impacts families, the core of who you are in America. I have seen that and believe that we are one American family. I was taught that I'm not less than anyone because of the color of my skin. I was freely able to worship any place that I chose. I was taught that and believe in Martin Luther King's injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see the courage of those who have hatred in their heart and those who want to discriminate and be racist, have the boldness to stand up and form a march in all places of Michigan where we have the largest Middle Eastern population outside of the Middle East. I too have worked with doctors, lawyers, teachers, business owners whose faith happens to be Muslim. Ladies and gentlemen, they are people, they are human beings. And what is our constant message? One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How dare us be silent at a moment like this? I want to thank my colleague, Congresswoman Jayapal, who has stood up and said, let's come together and use our voices and our bully platform to fight against hate in America. Diversity, ladies and gentlemen, is a cornerstone to our democracy. We're not a land of the free if anyone is excluded from that. I call on you and I call on for any American who truly believe in this great country to stand up and use your voice, because if you're silent, that means you condone it. And your silence allow those who are purposely being hateful and discriminatory and racist to grow. This is our country. The democracy says all the people. And if you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, your religion does not exclude you from the rights and freedoms of this great country. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to bring back our leader, Ms. Congresswoman Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And I think it's a sign of how much support there is on Capitol Hill that when we said we were going to do this press conference, we got so many members of Congress, all the way from our caucus chairman, Joe Crowley, our ranking member on Judiciary, and all the members that you heard. But the reason that we are so fortunate is that we have had advocates who have been in the field working on these issues every single day for such a long time. And I'm so grateful to have some of them with us today. And I want to start by introducing Corey Saylor from the Council for American Islamic Relations. We have had an amazing relationship over the years when I was an activist, but now here in Congress, it's an honor to have Corey and CAIR fighting every single day.
And thank you very much, Congresswoman Jayapal, for putting the press conference together and showing America that there are so many members of Congress that care deeply about making sure we stay united as a country. I'll be very quick. Act for America is a hate group. The leader of Act for America believes that the United States is at stage 2 Islamic cancer and that every practicing Muslim is a radical Muslim. And yet, despite that kind of rhetoric, she has put out her picture in the White House since Inauguration Day and Mar-a-Lago since Inauguration Day. But here's what I can tell you. The energy we see around these hate marches is coming from white supremacists, anti-government militia, and Islamophobes who share their ideology. So the only people they're motivating are people who share their kind of hate. Let me quickly tell you who American Muslims are. We are 1% of the population, but 5% of the doctors serving this nation. If you've ever eaten a Chobani yogurt, Muslim company. If you've ever looked at what was known as the Sears Tower in Chicago, designed by a Muslim. You might know the name Muhammad Ali. He might have been a Muslim. Sports champion in America. Ibtihaj Muhammad recently won a medal for the United States in the Olympics. Muslim. And nearby us here in Arlington Cemetery, there are Muslims who are buried there for having made the ultimate sacrifice to their country. So while ACT spews its hate rhetoric, Americans, Muslims will continue to serve this country, and will do so going forward in a very simple way. It is our goal to make sure that American democracy works for everyone, because if ACT is successful and denies us our constitutional rights, when somebody else is in the lens of hatred, and that is what will happen at some point, that next group will suffer. We want to make sure that we give to that next group the same gifts that have been given to us by American Jews, by African Americans, by American Catholics who used to be discriminated against. They gave us the protections we have today. We intend to make sure we uphold those protections for everyone else. Thank you.
It's wonderful, Corey. Thank you so much. That was incredible, and I hope everybody gets this information out so that we understand Muslims are our friends, our neighbors, our communities. And now, my dear, dear friend who I've worked with for such a long time, now the Executive Director of Amnesty International, a champion for justice and human rights, Margaret Wong.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much to Congresswoman Jayapal for her leadership on these issues. On behalf of the more than 1 million members and supporters of Amnesty International USA, I'm very grateful to be part of this collection of people standing up against hate. We won't stand by when hate threatens any community. We've stood up around the world against hate in the United Kingdom, in Hungary, in the Philippines, and in so many other places. And today we're happy to be standing up against hate here in the United States. We will stand up for human rights, for the dignity of every person in this country, and we won't stand by when hate threatens particular communities. We believe that all people have the right to live their lives in freedom from persecution, harassment, and discrimination. Religious freedom is not only enshrined in our Constitution, but also in international human rights laws. We've seen what happens when politicians work to divide us, and we're grateful when elected leaders like Congresswoman Jayapal and the many you heard from today stand up against hate. On Saturday, we urge our allies to stand up for human rights, to stand against hate. And we're stronger when we all come together and recognize the human rights of all communities here at home. Thank you for being here today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Margaret. And now it's a great pleasure to introduce, last but not least, Sonia Kateja from SALT, South Asian Americans Leading Tomorrow, and another organization I've had the great privilege of working with for a very long time. Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Jayapal, for inviting us. South Asian Americans Leading Together stands united with our Muslim, Arab, and Middle Eastern American sisters and brothers in opposition to Act for America's planned hate-fueled series of Islamophobic rallies on June 10th. These events serve only to manufacture hate and suspicion and encourage outright violence against the nation's already embattled Muslim American communities, as well as South Asian Americans writ large. Indeed, our communities are already reeling from what seem to be weekly incidents of hate violence nationwide, fanned by events and organizations such as Act for America's rallies on June 10th, and amplified by an emboldened white supremacist movement under the Trump administration's watch. Muslim and South Asian American communities all have a place in our nation, yet the president's words and policies, including his unconstitutional Muslim bans, have inspired near historic acts of hate against our communities by white supremacists, xenophobes, and Islamophobes. We call on elected and appointed officials to denounce the June 10th events and all attacks against our communities as indefensible and incompatible with the core values of this country. Our democracy deserves better than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to people across the country who I know are going to stand up against these rallies and for love, for generosity, for an America that welcomes all of us to be here and to contribute our best selves. And I know that even though I won't be in Seattle, I'll be in Detroit and Chicago on Saturday. I'm going to raise this, make sure that we are speaking out, continuing to speak out against hate, and fighting every single day for the rights of Muslims and for every community to practice their religion, their culture, and to know that they are valued for it. Thank you all so much.